At this time, we'll call to order the regular city council meeting for October 8th, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple notes, Lisa. Tim Wilhelm, our city attorney, said he may be just a couple minutes late, and then also Councilmember Walton said she will be here, but she's going to be a little bit late as well. Walton. So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from September 24th, 2018. What?
I thought she misunderstood who you had said was going to be late.
Oh, okay.
It was a misunderstanding on my part. Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead. Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
Page 4, if we could, in the motion to direct interim city manager, if you could add an S to official asses the building at the end of that first line. And I would request that could Councilman Kurtzweiler provide the actual spelling of your husband's last name?
Yes, I'll get that too. I'll get that correction when it's my turn.
I've asked, does that seem out of line?
Yes, that needs to be corrected.
So would you correct it?
I'll correct it when it's my turn. Thank you.
That's all I had, thanks.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you. The correction of Ken Mahalik name, and that would be on page 4 under the manager's report, is Michalik. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
At least on page 4, second sentence down, just a small correction. It says we need to look at this. The word "as" should be replaced with the word "on." It's on a want versus a basis.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Thanks.
I move the minutes as amended.
1 second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the approval of the bills this evening. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to note that on page 4 of 5, and that's on the check register for the city of South Lyon, there is a reimbursement for a Ken Mahalik in the amount of $258.42. So I am not going to vote on the bills tonight and abstain due to a conflict of interest because Ken Mahalik is my husband.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
The check register, 1 of 6. Let's see here. Wow. Okay. And I do like the bills being stapled together. It's a lot easier to manage right up until I'm trying to find something. The very top of that, Hubble, Roth, and Clark, the Knowles project. I was kind of curious if anyone knows why there's an $8,898.98 charge for the rezoning of the Knowles. I'd be happy to take that at our next meeting if somebody could look into that.
We'll look into that.
Thank you. That's all I had, actually.
I'll move the bills.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to the attorney bills this evening, but if anyone has anything, Tim isn't here yet, so you may need to take it up with him
Do you
later.
want to put it to a different part of the agenda?
We
Move
could
it
do
down?
that.
I'll move that we add this to the end of the agenda when Attorney Wilhelm returns.
I'll support that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Approval of the agenda this evening.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we will open up public comment. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Bill Charles. We've met before. I live at 61957 Ticonderoga in Colonial Acres. I'm the president of Colonial Acres Board of Directors, Phase 5. And I come before you this evening to offer our support for the changes on Thomasville Estate. We think that the developer has bent over backwards to make correct changes. We're pleased that our road and the gate we suggested is part of the plan, and I urge this council to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's Tim now.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Christensen. I live at 62292 Yorktown Drive in Colonial Acres, Phase 5. I am the vice president, and I too wanted to say that we are very happy with the work that these guys have done, and the majority of the people that live there are very happy with everything that they've come up with, and I encourage you to hopefully let this go through.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ryan Lair, 716 Grand Court. As the ambassador of South Lyon, I'd like to welcome Paul to our city. I hope you have a blast. It was nice seeing you at Pumpkin Fest. Glad to see you were out and having fun. And I would also like to thank the Pumpkin Fest committee for all their hard work this year, the volunteers, countless and thousands of volunteers that helped out, especially helping Witches Hat pick up their recycling. That was great. We saved a heck of a lot of recycling this year. And thanks to Ryan and Aaron for doing that. And what a great Pumpkin Fest. Everybody did a great job, and just a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll close public comment. And we'll move on to the discussion of downtown. Mr. Donahue.
Yes. Hello. We're going to go paperless tonight. I'm sorry. My report will be in the city manager's report. I think that this new city manager would like to be very conscientious about paperless. We're really in a busy time of year. It's really a great time of year, but there's a lot going off right now. So we're continuing a lot of projects, and we're right in the middle of planning and preparing for a series of events between October and December. So in addition to that, a lot of the projects that we're working on, it's all about change and a lot of good things taking place. So we'll be hearing a lot more about that in the next 2 to 3 months. Real quick, try to keep it brief. The corn stalks have been, all of them are up now downtown on all the light poles. We added pumpkins this year. We're a little short, but tomorrow the rest of the pumpkins come in. The lights are going on the corn stalks this year, and so when you leave tonight, if you don't go through downtown, you'll see that all the lights are up except for the southern part of South Lafayette. And tomorrow those will go up. So all the stalks, pumpkins, and lights will all be out there ready to go tomorrow evening. Our business directory, again, we've had double, triple checking, and we hope to have it out October 26th. We're waiting for the cover photo now, so the business directory will be out. And that'll be inserted in the ladies' night out bags. We're expecting somewhere between 700 and 1,000 this year of people, so I'll get back to that in just a second. Let's see here, just a couple quick things. I don't want to go through everything. The Michigan Downtown Association's statewide conference is October 11th, 12th, and 13th in Frankenmuth. I'll be attending. I'm still on the board. So over the 2.5 days, talk about a lot of best practices and things, and we bring back a lot of good information. And we have got 2 DDA board members that have expressed an interest in attending, and I think that'll be good that our board members want to kind of do a little more education of best practices in downtown. So that's a good thing. Real quick, Brotoberfest is coming at us. our chair, Joe Burchell, a city resident, reminds us that the event is October 20th, 5 to 10. There's an agenda item tonight about that. The Downtown Kids Trick or Treat is Thursday, October 25th, 6 to 8 p.m., a long-standing event. The chair is Abe Ayub, DDA board member, and Mayfair Realty. Ladies' Night Out is Friday, November 16th, 5:30 to 9. The chair is Marcia Callis, DDA board member and owner of Exquisite Kitchens and Design. The Cool Yule, we're stacking them up here. Cool Yule is December 1st. Chair Mike Horlocker, minister of the First Presbyterian Church, is bringing a lot of that downtown. So the parade, of course, proceeds down to the historic village, tree lighting and all the action down there, but it's going to loop back, and then at 8 o'clock we're going to have the Heinonen mega tree lighting at 8 o'clock with choirs singing there. And then Mike Horlocker has kind of a Christmas market in different groups on the Veterans parking lot and the Farmers Market parking lot. And some of the stores are going to stay open. So we're really kind of getting quite a loop set up for quite an evening, December 1st. Next year, we're going to begin, we've tested a lot of things out and how we communicate and how we prepare for our events. So next year, we've talked, DDA board members and our event chairs, that we're going to have work plans for each event, which we'll have set up probably 3 or 4 months in advance at least, a list of all the tasks for each event that the DDA or the city run, who's in charge of that task, the deadline for the task, volunteer assigned to each task, and the costs for any task. So we're going to get that element of the Main Street program where we're transparent about the schedule and all the communicating for the events. And I think the events will all be better for it. The last thing is that there's just a lot of really good things happening, and it's continuing to be a great year for downtown, so stay tuned.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything for Bob? Councilmember Parisian, go ahead.
Good evening, Bob. How are you?
Great, thanks. How are you?
I have actually a list of things I wanted to ask about. So let's start with number 1. How are things going with the RCA building? I walked past the other day, and it looks like it's being cleaned out.
They are cleaning it out. Tim is in touch with their attorney. They have an attorney now. And so we're looking forward to the city getting in to do its existing conditions report.
Okay.
That's kind of the next step with both the RCA building and the old art craft is the existing conditions report.
Okay.
Going through on the maintenance.
And then how about 110 Detroit? I thought the last that we had discussed with 110 Detroit, it was up for sale.
It is for sale. There are 2 people that are actively pursuing the purchase.
Okay.
I don't know where that stands. The last I saw one of the prospective purchasers, if you want to call them that, 2 weeks ago. And they're also talking to Providence Hospital about getting the vacant lot, which is adjacent to the east, which is right at the corner of Wells and Detroit.
Did you
We
happen?
want to take both pieces.
Okay. Did you kind of get a feel for whether it was going to be residential or going to be a commercial?
Both
that they were
parties that
interested
are
in?
trying to purchase, it'll be commercial.
Okay, that's good to hear. Also, what's the word with the candy store? Potential candy store.
The potential candy store still has to be confidential because the other building that person is purchasing won't be final until January.
Okay. And then
Still a
2
go. Still
Okay,
a
good.
go as far as I know.
That's always good news. 2 more things for you. The Brotoberfest, the flyer says 5 to 9, but then I heard word on the street that it was 5 to 10.
That's why tonight on the agenda item, there was a problem with the Michigan State game, Michigan State game. ABC had listed it as an expected. They used the word expected 7 o'clock. Well, TV schedules are crazy nowadays with
Yeah.
sports. And so Michigan State's second loss bumped it. But we've talked to the events people, and later tonight we're going to still ask for that extension of an hour or so.
So my only request would be that if we extend it, if we can just promote it as much as possible on Facebook or wherever we can on our city website, just so people are aware of the correct time.
Yes.
And
The
then
billboard, it may be up now. It was supposed to go up tonight or tomorrow morning. the billboard north of the tracks, southbound, that had the cheerleaders. It may be up there. That billboard will have the 5 to 10.
Very cool. Okay, that's an excellent way to get people's attention. And lastly, so I know we had a gentleman who wanted to be appointed to the DDA. He's not on the list still. Is he, Jeff, correct?
Correct. The reason for that is the DDA at its September meeting tabled the item until the October meeting, which is this week on the 11th,
Okay,
to have that discussion, and then it will come to the city council.
okay, cool. All right, thank you very much.
Councilmember Kivel?
I was just curious, the 110, so with that being in play to be sold, we've relaxed our pursuit of trying to get them for the maintenance standards?
They seem to be actively pursuing the sale, and the price appears to be very reasonable. It appears to be likely. I'm not going to comment on any of the other properties. Those don't seem as positive as this one. This seems very positive. Seems to be proceeding.
I mean, of the 5, that one's the one that seems as though it has the most likelihood of transitioning more quickly, so,
Correct.
yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Good evening, Bob. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I have just 2 questions regarding the bylaws and the minutes that were attached, and the questions are not germane to the issue later on the agenda, so I'm going to bring it up now.
Sure.
When I was reading the minutes, I noticed from July 12th that Derek Mashburn was absent.
Correct.
Does he continue to be absent?
That was, well, July, August, September. Okay, in September, our last meeting, he was absent for 3 in a row. One of those was unexcused. Those are his only absences.
Plus the one on July 12th?
July, August, September, yeah. So those were the 3.
So those will be the 3.
Yes.
And I understand that you have 2 applications for, as of tonight, only 1 position.
Correct. As you can see, in July 12th, the board recommended unanimous that Jeff Heinonen be recommended for approval by City Council. Jeff, because of his vacation schedule and a very busy time of year, plus trying to do his project, wanted to be here to have, and I said I don't anticipate a lot of discussion, but he wanted to be here when he was on the agenda, so he asked for it to be held off. So that was held off because of that request.
Well, I go to the minutes, and I see where he attended the meeting, and he spoke briefly about his business. He expressed an interest that he would like to join the DDA and help promote the city, but nowhere in the minutes does it say that the board of directors reviewed his application. Did the board, the DDA board, at this July 12th meeting, have his application in hand?
Yes, we had an application.
Then why was it not referred to in the minutes?
I don't think we referred to the application for he nor the last 2. The last time we put on Mark and Mark from South Lyon Cycle and Ann Butchtrup, I don't think the minutes reflected that we looked at their application. We had it, but we didn't reflect it in the minutes.
I would think an easy way to solve this would be if you have somebody on the DDA that's not attending meetings, I would open up that position, and that solves your problem right there. But that's just my common sense way of solving it.
I was asked by the board to contact Derek at the September meeting of the DDA. I did contact Derek. He was hopeful. He expressed an interest to stay on. However, his new employer told him that he had to discuss that one more time, and so I am supposed to speak with Derek tomorrow. And it could be that after tomorrow we may have another opening.
Also, I wanted to let you know, I keep talking about the city competing and competing with other towns, competing with other cities, and I think it's a good topic to continue to bring up. Pulte Homes has a great website where they are promoting their new estates at Hutsfield, which is over on Griswold between 8 and 9 Mile. There's about 300 homes going in there. And what they have done is one of their photographs is actually a photograph of Lake Street Tavern. It is a great photograph. Obviously, everybody who goes to that website looking at a Pulte home
Great.
is going to see it. And it says it offers families a peaceful retreat that is only minutes from the shopping and dining in downtown South Lyon.
Great.
So I thought that was a great byline. I'll give this to you tonight.
Awesome.
But they also remind the new owners that are coming into town, oh, by the way, you're not far from downtown Northville, Novi, and Ann Arbor. So even though you have a great plug in there for the city of South Lyon, I think it's important to remember you've got competition all around you for your downtown district. But I thought, on behalf of Pulte, I just thought that was a very, very nice compliment to the city. Yeah, it's very, very nice. It's a great photograph, too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job, so thank you.
Councilmember Richards?
Bob, a question.
Yes, sir.
I went through the bylaws here on this. How do you feel? Do you consider this a major change in the structure of the bylaws of the DDA, especially when the appointment process falls on the mayor and is excluded from the city manager?
Well, if I'm asked that later on the agenda, would you like me to handle that now, Mayor?
Let's talk
No,
about it.
yeah, it's on the agenda for later. I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't.
okay,
So
all
we
right.
can handle that question at that point in
Okay,
time.
fine,
Thank you, Carl.
yeah.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
I just had one comment that it was kind of couched in terms that we have a problem with having a candidate in the queue for DDA. I wish all of our commissions had that same problem, so I'm okay with that. So he'll be fresh and ready to go when
I agree. It's a very
somebody else
positive
walks.
sign.
Yeah.
And all the people that have said that they see there appears to be a lot of spirit going on and they want to be part of it.
Yeah.
Love
And
it.
I mean, her reflection of that ad, I think it speaks volumes.
Yeah.
You know, people are recognizing that there's some vitality downtown now, so they want to be involved.
It's a great sign.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. We'll see you in a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to old business number 1, the second reading of zoning ordinance amendment to amend and add definitions and limit the height of utility posts and other structures in a public right-of-way. The recommendation is to approve this reading. Does anyone have anything to discuss? Okay.
Let's do it.
Tim?
I have nothing to add. There's nothing changed. I believe I saw a lot of emails. I think Senate Bill 637 may have been, it went out of the state Senate, but I don't know where it's at since then.
Okay.
But it is moving.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
I'd like to move to approve the second reading of an ordinance amending the City of South Lyon zoning ordinance, Sections 102-3 and 102-104, to amend and add definitions and limit the height of utility poles and other structures in a public right-of-way.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Old business number 2 this evening, first reading of ordinance rezoning parcel 21-19-126-002, Thomasville, from RM1, multiple family residential, to PD plan development.
Mr. Mayor,
Tim?
we have the applicant here. I'd like them to make the presentation, followed by Kelly.
Okay,
If council would like to proceed that way, that would be my suggestion.
that's great. Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Just before we begin, while you go ahead and get ready to get set up, I'd like to thank Kelly McIntyre for spending the time this morning going through the package and addressing the issues that were raised and clarifying some of the other points that are on there. I certainly do appreciate that, Kelly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Lorenzo Cavalier, 30078 Shaner, Suite 300, Warren, Michigan. We've had a couple meetings and several discussions since the last time I was here, and I'm hoping that we've come to some common ground here. We've made some notable changes to the plan to address what we consider have been areas of concern in the past. First off, we changed 6 of the home footprints of the 50, going from one of the larger footprint models to the smaller footprint models, which took our number of the Hampton unit down to a potential of 32, could be less, the Dalton to 7, and the Newton to 11, which makes up the total of 50. The plan currently does not have one lot that with building footprint, porch, and deck at a size of 12 by 25 does not have one lot that is above 35% coverage. There are 3 lots that I'd like to note that do have smaller decks so that we could make sure that there's not one that's greater than 35, and one has a deck size of 12 by 23, one has a deck size of 12 by 22, and the other has a deck size of 12 by 15. All other lots are showing a deck size of 12 by 25, which we're trying to kind of address a homeowner at a later date coming back for variance on that. So they have a fairly generous sized deck to work with post-closing if they end up building a deck at a later date. Just a few other highlights to point out, that the landscape plan, which is not changed in the last couple of months, but the proposed trees do exceed the ordinance requirements. We've agreed to irrigate the 2-foot strip between sidewalk and curb to irrigate and sod. We've submitted additional elevations, which was per the request of the city. And the deck footprints are shown on all of the plans. That was a change that was made prior. I just wanted to point that out. And I'm available to answer any other questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
You had mentioned the irrigation and the easement. Is that going to be the cost for the water going to be covered by the homeowners association?
It'd be, that little strip would be on the same irrigation system as the house itself.
Okay.
Because then you'd have to have a separate irrigation for that, just that 2-foot strip with a separate meter just for that 2-foot strip. And for the size of it, I don't think it'd be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So everyone will control their own easement, whether or not it gets watered or not?
It would be no different than their front lawn.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I've got some comments to make. I don't really have any other questions at this time. You had suggested, I'd like to, know which decks or what lots were associated with those smaller decks, if you know the numbers.
Lot 20,
Okay,
Lot 22,
Okay.
and Lot 32.
all right, thank you. I'll just make my comments when everyone's done with questions.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a question per se. I would like to compliment you, the city attorney, the folks at Colonial Acres, the people from CIB Planning for your efforts in working through the issues to come to a point of consensus that better matches the vision that has been established in the conversations we've had over the last number of months. I really appreciate the effort that's gone forward to bring us to this point. And in looking at the site plan and looking at the percent of lot coverage and everything else, one of the key points that needs to be highlighted, it's actually in micro print, I think, on the site plan sheet that was in the packet. Kelly helped me find it. It's actually note number 3 that states that the houses shown are the largest model house that can fit on the lot that is shown. So what's been presented is that's the house that will be on that particular site. Unless, should a smaller model be purchased, lot coverage would then be, it would be reduced. This ensures that the lot coverage will not increase and may be reduced if a smaller model is placed on that particular lot. So, I mean, this is basically saying that with the site plan there, identifying the models that are on each one of those 50 lots, that is the house, whatever the elevation is for that house, and the square footage for it that will be built on that particular parcel.
That is correct. That would be
That's a
the
key-
largest.
That is a key point. Like I said, it's unfortunate, like it was in that micro print that I just had a hard time locating, but that's a very key point, and I appreciate you making that statement on that.
Thank you, and I'd like to also thank the city consultants as well. It's been quite a collaboration here.
That's all I have.
Does anyone else have anything before I go back to Councilmember Kivel? All right, Glenn, go ahead.
I am very appreciative of the fact that you've been reaching out and trying to find some accord with some of the misgivings that had been mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, I think that it's the lot coverage that you're talking about is the soils lot coverage. It's not the building lot coverage. Those are substantively different lot coverage limits. And one of the problems that I've got is, I'm just going to read this thing and I can kind of make comments after that if there's a need to. The approval process for this development has been very difficult. The beginning premises portrayed to me had been to construct single-story homes to be marketed to empty nesters or active seniors uninterested in the daily use of stairs to second-floor bedrooms or having to tend to large, high-maintenance lots. This type of development had been very successfully accomplished at Lexington Place, just north of the high school, and seemed a good fit as a more sedate lifestyle for neighbors of the abutting Colonial Acres development to its south and east borders. The first look City Council had of this proposal had 3 concept ranches and 2 two-story houses, all on exceptionally small lots. The proposal has since changed to 3 versions of 2-story lots. This is clearly not in keeping with the empty nester or active senior market model. These are houses to be marketed for a standard family development. That means kids, toys, and room in the yard for them to play. This calls attention to one of 5 waivers required to pass this first reading of the PD zoning. The waiver would allow an average lot area of 5,000 square foot as standard R3 development, which is the single-family residential parallel to the currently zoned RM1 multifamily residential zoning. The minimum lot size is 8,750 square feet. This loss of 3,700 plus square feet in lot space may or may not be seen as an empty nest to an empty nester, as a true benefit by limiting their yard chores, but the proposed two-story houses do not meet empty nester needs. This same loss in lot space is a significant inhibitor for normal activities as it pertains to a family's yard. The other waivers are for a reduction of lot width to 50 feet when the standard is 70 feet. The overall density of 4.3 units per acre when the standard is 3.7. A side yard minimum setback of 5 feet when the standard is 6 feet, and a rear yard setback of 30 feet for all but 5 apparently now, as it's gotten up to lots that would need to be even less than 35 when this, or 30 when the standard is 35. One of these lots needs a rear yard setback of 5 feet. I have the most resistance to this proposal, though, because of 27, more than half of the 50 lots in this development that exceed the 25% building lot coverage. This limitation has been reconfirmed unanimously by the Planning Commission at their August 9th, 2018 meeting as an important benchmark, and at least a few members of City Council have stated their continued support of this limit. The complications that have surrounded this approval seem to be the result of the developer's overreach to maximize his profits at the expense of our community and its standards, which are in place to ensure we enjoy reliably positive long-term results for a good quality of life for our residents. 19 of the 27 lots could be conforming if the developer changed the house to one of the 2 smaller units being proposed. That still leaves 8 lots that will not conform under any circumstances to the three buildings that you've pitched. I won't approve this first reading as it presently stands. I think the city has worked in good faith to find ways to move this project forward. In my mind, we've relaxed our standards too far already, especially since it doesn't meet the needs of the empty nester target audience. The developer wanted to save money by using the engineering and design already created by Monument Engineering from an earlier version of this property, and I think that that makes good sense. Unfortunately, the developer doesn't admit that there are too many lots to meet even these extremely relaxed lot sizes to house relationships. It's easy to see this as a self-imposed hazard by the developer. It's said he will sell this project to Pulte Building if he receives final approval of the project, and I have no qualms with that as long as we are getting a conforming development that meets our community's needs. This, in my view, does not meet that standard. Apparently, Pulte doesn't, build a house to fit those 8 lots, but that doesn't mean that other builders don't have something that would qualify. I think the city has already bent more than it should. The problems have been identified. I believe the developer needs to solve them for this project to move forward. So I'd be happy to entertain any kind of comment or rebuttal that you would bring forward on that.
I'll give them something too. Okay, fine.
In response to some of your questions, comments, the site is being proposed right now as a PD, and the true spirit of PDs being part of most zoning ordinances are that you're dealing with an irregularly shaped site, a rail along one property line, and there's the creation of open space areas, and it's a trade-off for some of potentially setbacks or lot sizes. That's the true spirit of PD. And there's a reason why I think a lot of communities, including South Lyon, has it as part of its zoning ordinance. I would like to go back to the submittal on the 40-foot lots, which had all ranch homes. That's not the case. The plan that was approved with the 40-foot lots was initially submitted with 3 colonial plans, and one of the floor plans to those elevations had a master bedroom on the second floor. Which,
Oh, I had mentioned that. The
which-
3 original ranches that were pitched and then 1 colonial, yeah.
No. The plan that was submitted, the plans that were submitted were 3 plans, and all 3 of them were colonials. None of them were ranches.
I've got the paperwork at my home.
That you made a statement as to what had been submitted before. I'm just clear from my perspective, from what I know of this project, that plan had 3 colonials with one of the plans with the master bedroom on the second floor. We were then asked to submit some additional elevations and some additional plans, and we did, and those included some ranches. But at no time was this project been submitted with the 40-foot wide development that went for approval by me with all ranches.
I never made mention of any 40-foot frontage. My only comment had been they were 50-foot from the RM, or the R3 70-foot. That's already a reduction. So this relationship with the PD, this is a quid pro quo kind of a deal. You get something, we get something. You're suggesting that the open space that's been provided for, which is just a rim around an existing pond back there, is the trade-off that we receive so that you can end up stuffing all these small lots with big houses on them. So
My comments regarding the PD are just my viewpoint, generally what
no, I
PD
think they're
stand for.
valuable tools.
But that aside, I'm speaking more so to that this plan had all ranches, and now we went all to colonials. That's not the case. And I thought that's what you had said.
No, I never said.
Okay, then we're good.
The original
Then we're
plan
good.
had shown 3 elevations of ranches and 1 colonial. Now, I never saw it transposed into a lot or an elevation here, so, I mean, it was simply 3 renderings of houses, which anybody that's on this side of the table understands those don't mean anything until there's an actual signed proposal. I mean, it's just, it could be this, it could be that, but until you have a final, I mean, none of that means anything, except for the fact that you've bailed on all of the ranches and now everything is a 2-story home. So
My original submittal had no ranches, 0. It's 3 colonials.
well, that was
That's
the
what was
first
approved.
packet of
That's what was approved on the 40-foot lots. 3 colonials. We added after when we were asked to. But the original proposal did not have 3 ranches and 1 colonial. Had 3 colonials.
Okay, I mean, all
Just for
the,
purposes of clarification.
well,
more than-
and I do appreciate that. In no circumstances is a 2-story home something that's going to likely be attractive to an empty nester, which this had been pitched as when this whole thing started.
Not by the developer.
Well, no, I have to admit, that was by our planner, was the one that was trying to sell that angle. So that's why I'm a little bit disturbed that here we are in the 11th hour, and we've got something that I think is wholly inappropriate to have that size home. 27 of the 50 lots don't have compliance on lot coverage. So the impervious soils thing at 35 is a whole different animal than putting that big structure on that lot. Planning Commission rolled on the 35 as well as, we're going to be talking about that next. And I don't see anybody that's likely to end up being resistant to that. We've kind of fallen into a trap where we've had an awful lot of downstream problems as a product of having big homes on small lots, and then we don't have any room for the amenities that people want. So that 35 impervious soils was supposed to end up helping us solve that problem. That doesn't take care of the issue that everyone is on board with, the idea of 25% being the maximum limit for the buildings itself, and that means the building and the porch. So I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. I just wish that we could come to some kind of an accord that that is a viable thing, that you can turn those, the 19 houses that you do have an alternative, turn those into something that can be compliant, because those Hamptons were the biggest violator of being able to give you compliance. I think it was 25, something like that. Oh, shoot. Another packet where we have so many papers that it's very difficult to try to manage finding information. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was 19 of the Hamptons that have the opportunity to be changed into either of the other two, and those houses are compliant as well to the lot coverage. So then you just have those 8 strays that you don't have a house for. You know, the grand scheme of this, and this was one of the things that our planner had provided to us, that the overall lot coverage is 18%, and that's just simply not accurate. The actual lot coverage is 25.32595%. So that's the building to the lots. So, you know, I mean, you haven't made it on the aggregate, and you haven't made it on all but 23 of the 50 houses.
On the aggregate, we do make it. The question about what the planner had put in there, that calculation, I think, is more of a question for Kelly than for me. But I would like to point out, as Councilmember Kennedy mentioned, that of the 32 Hamptons, that would mean that on those 32 lots, every single purchaser on all 32 would walk in and say, "I want the Hampton, I want the Hampton, I want the Hampton." The likelihood of that happening is probably slim.
But there are specific houses you could preclude that from being an issue, because it isn't compliant. They shouldn't be offered there.
Yeah, with we gave up we changed 6 footprints so that since the last plan, so where we switched out the Hampton with the other 2 smaller footprints to reduce the number of Hamptons.
Okay, well, that's what I'd like to see before I'll be able to approve that first reading.
That's
all.
in the plan right now,
No, it isn't.
the reduction.
No, it's not.
You're full of shit. He's full of shit. It's wrong. It's a lie.
Councilmember Richards, you have something to say?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Cavallari, Carl Richards, 390 Lennox. I just want to make a few comments here. I appreciate everybody's work on this and concern over the years, and I don't have the background of Mr. Kibble with his building license and experience in the trade for years, but I come at it from a different angle, okay, and because I'm familiar with that property. I've walked it different times. I think I went hunting on it one time years ago, but that's immaterial, okay. Jim Pelkey didn't build on that land for a reason, okay? And you have never provided an underground hydrological survey, okay, of the water, which is, you got a lot of it, and it all comes from the Knolls up on the other side of town, which we talk about all the time. That's the source of all of it that goes into Green Oak Township and everywhere, okay? It goes right under your property along the base of that tracks. Evidently, I'm sorry, sir, but your architects must be oblivious to the laws of physics, okay? Because water will amplify vibration underground, okay? And you don't have basements, you got flat slabs for homes, okay? Even whether they're 2-story or not, okay? if you look at Colonial Acres plans and designs, okay, they have a buffer built into their landscape architecture through the whole thing, okay, which acts as a damper for vibration that comes from the railroad track. I'm sorry, but you really don't have that in your whole plans. And vibration is going to be a factor if people want to move into these units. We're pretty much accustomed to the Planning Commission never getting the deal right, okay? And we're the last hope of the city to put off a disaster. And we got to look at protecting the future of the town. I support people's right to develop their property in the way they want to develop it. But you got to realize the people have the obligation, this board has the obligation to review things and look at it from a bigger perspective, not just Colonial Acres interests, but the whole town, okay, and the precedent we set. In my opinion, this project is wrong for this acreage and this setting. If this were to be built, okay, with the railroad track right there, our society has drug problems, okay? If units were built in there, eventually this is going to be springtime for the druggies, because they're going to come right down the railroad tracks with their four-wheeler vehicles, and it's going to be, okay, I'm just saying, I appreciate all the work you put into this and your rights to do so, okay? But if this was ever approved by us in its present form, with the exception of Councilperson Kurzweil and Mayor Dan, the rest of us would all be in serious jeopardy of being a petition for recall for violation of sacred public trust to the community, in my opinion. Okay? That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Friesian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kelly, you've been awfully quiet. Do you have anything you want to add? I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kennedy actually covered a lot of the points that I wanted to cover, but one thing I did want to note is in the packet, I provided you with a quick fact sheet about planned developments, what the purpose of planned developments are, what the intention is. And planned developments allow flexibility for properties that might not otherwise be able to be developed by the zoning ordinance district that they're in. This particular property that we're talking about is long and narrow, it's triangular, it's adjacent to the railroad tracks, and it is adjacent to a well-established senior housing community. It has unique challenges. It can either be developed as is, as RM1, and with that, you can have 60-plus apartment units, or under the RM1 district, you're allowed to develop as single-family homes. Just by the property dimensions, you could have 44 single-family homes. They are proposing 50. Those 44 single-family homes could never possibly be developed on there just because of the constraints of the lot sizes. It's triangular. You would never be able to make the setbacks and the dimensions. What they are proposing is, from the planner's perspective, we are very comfortable with it. It provides and satisfies some of the intended goals and master plan goals of this community, which is to provide a diversity in housing. We currently have apartments. We have larger single-family homes. We don't have moderately priced new construction homes in this community, and this proposal could do that. We recognize that there are some concessions that are made, such as smaller lot sizes, smaller side yard setbacks. Those types of housing, if you look around throughout southeastern Michigan, are selling. That they are appropriate, they are selling, and the market will absorb all of that. We don't have any problem with the 25% lot coverage up to the 35% lot coverage. That's pretty standard in most communities. In fact, a lot of communities are going over 35%. We're seeing 40 and 50% coverage. So we are comfortable with that. Again, a highlight point that Mr. Kennedy made was that the model that you see on that particular lot is the largest model that can be there. So it will not increase in lot coverage, but there's a great possibility that it could reduce in lot coverage. I'm happy to answer any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, actually, let me ask you a question then, because you've got 19 houses that are beyond the 25%.
Okay.
So why doesn't that cause you pause when they have an alternative? I mean, just preclude that house from being afforded onto those lots, and that problem goes away.
Why does it not cause us pause? Is that what you're asking me? Well, if we were looking at this as straight R3 development, it would. We're not. We're looking at a PD, which provides, like I said, flexibility. It allows you to deviate from some of the standards in order to get a good development. So if relaxing some of those standards allows this property to be developed in an economically feasible way, that it can be developed for the developer and to the benefit of the community, then we see that as a win-win.
Well, we have relaxed many of the standards. I mean, we've got 5 waivers, and we're going to add the 35 for impervious soils. That 25%, you were at that planning commission meeting when all of them said, we do not want to exceed that. So why is that not cause you any concern?
They said that is correct, but yet they also were okay with this PUD or this plan development.
They were prior to this whole discussion on that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that support of maintaining the 25% was in the discussion talking about raising that impervious soils aspect of it,
Correct.
not pertaining to this specific development.
Right.
So, I mean, you're kind of mixing apples and oranges there. That's unfortunate.
Questions?
Does anyone else have anything?
Mr. Mayor,
Tim?
if I could just add a few comments before there's any council discussion.
Go
So
ahead.
I do want to highlight a few things from the agenda note. Plan developments are a 4-step process. This is step 2. You are allowed by statute to impose conditions on a PD approval. The suggested motion here would be to approve, and there are listed conditions. Those are largely generated from your planning commission and their recommendation to council. They have been modified slightly based on the additional information and changes to the plan since planning commission made its recommendation. If there are any other questions, I can answer any of those.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of South Lyon, incorporated into the South Lyon zoning ordinance by section 102-182, by rezoning the property parcel number 21-19-126-002, more fully described in the attached Exhibit A as the property from the RM1 district multiple family residential to the PD district planned development, subject to the following conditions. You want me to read the conditions, Tim?
Preferably, yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Section 102-381 through 102-392 of the City of South Lyon zoning ordinance pertaining to the planned development zoning district as amended, which is part of the City of South Lyon Code of Ordinances, Chapter 102. Section B, the preliminary Stage 1 Plan Development Site Plan for Thomasville, prepared by Monument Engineering Group Associates Incorporated. Plans revised and dated September 27, 2018. C, City Council approval of a final Stage 2 Plan Development Site Plan for Thomasville pursuant to the city's zoning ordinance. D, City Council approval of a Plan Development Agreement for Thomasville Site Condominium Development. E, any and all conditions on the approvals of the City of South Lyon Planning Commission relating to the property and preliminary Stage 1 and final Stage 2 Plan Development Site Plans for Thomasville as reflected in the official minutes of June 14, 2018, and documentation of such approvals including 1, a waiver to allow an average lot area of 5,000 square feet. 2, a waiver to allow a minimum lot width of 50 feet. 3, a waiver to allow an overall density of 4.3 units per acre. 4, a waiver to allow a setback of 10 feet between buildings. 5, a waiver to allow for rear yard setbacks of 30 feet and less than 30 feet for lots number 7. Number 18, lots 20 through 22, as shown on the preliminary site plan and is listed in CIB's September 30th, 2018 review letter. 6, the installation of landscape buffering and a 6-foot vinyl fencing abutting Colonial Acres to be installed at the beginning of the project/construction. 7, inclusion of language for a future cross-access easement agreement with Colonial Acres via Lexington Drive. 8, submission of revised building elevations and material samples to the Planning Commission during final Stage 2 Plan Development Site Plan Review and draft condominium documents. For example, the master deed, bylaws, and exhibits to be submitted during final Stage 2 Plan Development Site Plan Review for the city review and approval. I think you have something misnumbered in there. I'm going to suggest number 9 would be a 2-foot irrigated green belt between the curb and sidewalk. And number 10, compliance with reports, comments, requirements, and recommendations by other city departments and other agencies having jurisdiction. F, all applicable city ordinances and design standards. And finally, G, all development, improvements, and use of the property being subject to and in compliance with the approved preliminary Stage 1 and final Stage 2 Plan Development Site Plans for Thomasville, all other applicable conditions thereon as reflected in the official minutes and documentation and approvals and the Plan Development Agreement.
A second.
Wow.
We have a motion and a second.
Roll call vote, please.
Lisa, Councilmember Richards has requested a roll call vote, so that's fine by me.
Okay, Kennedy?
Yes.
Hibble?
Absolutely no.
Brazian?
Yes.
Walton?
Yes.
Richards?
No.
Kurzweil?
I abstain for conflict of interest.
No. I object to that. You have no conflict of
I
interest.
have a conflict of interest with respect to Colonial Acres. If you
This
look
isn't
at,
about Colonial
if you look at
Acres.
section number 7, it requires language for a future cross-access easement agreement with Colonial Acres via Lexington Drive. As long as that's in there, I have the conflict of interest.
Could you weigh in on that, Tim?
I've been
That's
cons-
not going anywhere, so
Has been consistent with that.
I've been consistent with raising that.
I'm going to review the ethics ordinance that relates to conflicts of interest.
Kolchak?
Yes.
You have to remember, Tim, I have a client. The client waives the conflict of interest, not you or the city.
Well, but you're declaring a conflict of interest as a council member.
Right, because I had a prior legal relationship with Colonial Acres.
that has no bearing on this.
Well, that's your opinion.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, I have a question.
It's a moot issue. It seems like you have the votes to carry it.
Could we entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess to allow Mr. Wilhelm to look this up?
Sure. Or do you want to table this to a different, and move on with those items that can be resolved?
Well, I can, so the ethics ordinance, which has been adopted in Chapter 2, Section 2-76, conflict of interest. No city official or employee, whether paid or unpaid, shall engage in any business or transaction or have a financial interest, as defined in Section 2-71, direct or indirect, which is incompatible with the proper discharge of his or her official duties in the public interest, or would tend to impair his or her independence of judgment or action in the performance of his or her official duties. There are examples provided in Section B, and there are 3 provided. One is incompatible employment or service. No city official or employee shall engage in or accept private employment or render services in any capacity, including but not limited to as a consultant, contractor, or agent to any individual or entity when such employment or service is incompatible with the proper discharge of his or her official duties or would tend to impair his or her independence of judgment or action on the performance of his or her duties. So I think the argument, based on the information provided, Councilmember Kurzweil is as an attorney and representing an adjacent property owner, and as I understand, is declaring that this influences her independence of judgment in this context. There is an option under the ordinance to refer such a question to the Board of Ethics, which is currently populated. In addition, I would point out that Charter, Chapter 4 of the Charter Rules of Council, Section 4.6, no council member shall vote on any question in which he is financially interested or any question concerning his or her own conduct, but on all other questions, every councilman present shall vote unless excused by unanimous consent of the remaining members present. Now, that section raises some questions about whether the final clause relates to something where there is a financial interest alleged or asserted. So in order to give you a legal opinion, I would need more time. And as pointed out, the motion carries with 4 votes in favor, regardless of the outcome of that opinion. So you have a couple of choices. You can direct your city attorney to render an opinion on the conflict of interest. You could refer the matter to the Board of Ethics, or you can take other action.
It's not a vote that's going to change the outcome. Would you,
This isn't close to being completed, though.
That's true.
This is going to be coming up at least
again,
one more time by
Yes.
us. So I'd like to recommend that we just send it to the Board of Ethics and get their feet wet. So
Excuse me.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
Thank you. I would prefer that it go to the city attorney because this involves attorney-client information, and nobody on the ethics board has any experience at all in looking at standards of conduct under the professional rules of conduct with respect to conflicts of interest with an attorney and their client. This is sort of a complicated issue.
that's why they're populating the ethics board.
There's no attorneys on that board.
Tim, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, as the city attorney, I would be involved in assisting and working with the Board of Ethics to provide any legal guidance and advice that they need in order to answer the question if council decides to refer the matter to the Board of Ethics.
It's okay. I can call the client, try to get a waiver, but I'll let the client make that decision,
Mr.
but
Mayor?
not me.
Go ahead.
I don't know that we need the details of, other than, I think you've disclosed that it's the owners of the adjacent Colonial Acres parcel. or the ownership, the underlying ownership, given the, I don't know that, I don't see an obvious need for anything further than that identification of the client. Perhaps there might be questions about whether the representation is current or when it ended, but those may be issues. I don't believe those get into attorney-client privilege issues directly.
Councilmember Parisian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You took the words right out of my mouth, Attorney Wilhelm. I was going to say that the same thing, depending on whether or not the representation is current, I think has a big role to play in this. And we don't need to get into the details at the moment, but I see no qualms with this going to the Board of Ethics, especially since we just populated it. We finally have a quorum now. I think we should let them get their feet wet, let them get a little bit of exposure, and with your assistance, I don't see a problem with it. I'd be, if you want to make the motion, I'll be happy to second that. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I do make the motion that we send this issue to the Board of Ethics.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. And I don't vote because it relates to me.
Okay.
I abstain. Conflict of interest.
Lisa, did you get that? All right.
So this passes.
Yes,
To
the
be
motion
clear.
passes to take that to the Board of Ethics.
No, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Mayor. I mean, just to be clear, the motion that we just had regarding Mr. Cavalier's property and what's going on with
The
that.
first reading,
That passed.
that
That
motion
passed. I just
passes.
want to make sure that's on the record. We're clear. Good, okay.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good idea, Councilmember Friesian, on the
I got confused,
quick
so.
cliff notes there. Okay, we will move on to old business number 3, second reading of lot coverage zoning ordinance amendment. Anyone got anything? Councilmember Kennedy.
Okay, I've discussed this with Kelly McIntyre from CIB this morning. I think it reflects the discussions that we had previously.
Mr. Mayor?
They've been,
Oh, excuse me.
we
Mr.
can-
Willem, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it was brought to my attention that there may be some confusion about your vote in the roll call vote.
My vote?
Yes,
He voted yes?
Yes.
he did?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So back to Councilmember Kennedy and your thoughts on,
so I discussed this morning with Kelly McIntyre, and it looks like it's incorporated everything that we discussed previously. I think there's a potential for misinterpretation. If you look at the definitions that have been in place for this particular ordinance for a number of years, it states that a building, the definition of a building, is any structure, either temporary or permanent, having a roof supported by columns or walls and intended for the shelter or the enclosure of persons, animals, chattels, property of any kind. Okay? So if we look at what we're looking at adding as far as the definition for impervious surfaces, it says they include but not limited to pools, unenclosed decks, enclosed decks and sheds. Those two items in particular, by definition, are buildings. And they need to count against the 25% lot coverage and be separated from the impervious lot coverage that is factored up to the 10%. Everything else there is an impervious surface, other than those two items, which by the definition we've had for a number of years are buildings and should be in the calculation against the 25% lot coverage. That would be the concern I have, to make it clearly black and white and remove this gray area, because somebody will come at a later point in time and say, I want to put a house on my lot, covers 25%, and then, by the way, I want to build an enclosed deck, I want to put a shed up there, and those are just impervious surfaces, even though by definition, they are buildings. That would be the one correction I would recommend making.
Kelly, go ahead if you have
Thank
a
you.
statement.
I would see no problem with removing those two from the definition to make it more clear. No problem with removing those.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else have anything?
Thank you, Kelly.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the resolution. Oh,
With the,
sorry.
With request the changes?
yep.
Wait.
I'll second.
That's all right, go, wait.
Oh, you weren't done, huh?
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead. Yep.
That we approve the second reading of the ordinance to amend City of South Lyon Code of Ordinances, Chapter 102, zoning, Article 7, supplementary district, regulations, District 2, height, bulk, density, and area limitations, and ad infinitum, with the suggested changes that Mr. Kennedy had suggested.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Old business number 4, resolution authorizing city manager and/or city attorney to sign documents and take other actions to complete the city's purchase of 501 McMunn Street.
Mr. Mayor and council,
Mr. Weld?
we are scheduled for the close on 501 McMunn tomorrow, and given the way that this rolled out from closed session and putting the property under contract, we wanted to make it very clear that the city manager, and it's my understanding, City Manager Zelenak will be attending the closing, so he will be signing the documents on behalf of the city.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing city manager and/or the city attorney to sign documents and take other actions to complete the city's purchase of 501 McMunn Street, South Lyon, Michigan 48178, as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
I have a
Sorry.
question.
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
Why would we retain the language of the city attorney remaining on there?
Anybody can sign it? He may get sick
What's
tomorrow.
the need for us leaving that in there if Paul's going to be there?
It's your discretion.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be in there. If something comes up and Paul needs to leave, at least I have the authority to sign.
All right, I'm not going to get heartburned by this, but I would prefer it were a city official as opposed to a contract attorney, so, all right, okay.
I wanted to say something.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I visited the site today, and Mr. Allen was there, and he asked me if I'd like to see the inside of the place, and I said, sure, I'd love to. And he took me on a tour of the lower level and the upper level, and the previous tenants that were in there, they are gone. That's the main thing. It's relatively cleaned out.
Hey, Carl, could I raise a point of order? We're talking about authorizing documents.
Okay,
This
but
isn't a discussion about that property. This is about a specific,
Okay, all
yeah,
right.
a specific
Okay,
vehicle that
all
we're
right.
trying to sell.
Hold on to comments.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Did we say that we were going to do that at the end of old business? Tim, we had postponed the attorney bills until you got here.
Okay.
So we're going to jump back to that for a moment. Did anyone have anything on the attorney bills for Mr. Wilhelm?
I move the attorney bills for the city attorney.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. New business number 1 this evening, budget amendments. Recommendation is to approve the proposed amendments. Thank you for being here, Lori.
We just have a couple here that we need to do. One is to amend the budget for the purchase of 501 McMunn, which will be in capital improvement and land acquisition. And the other amendment is for a piece of equipment where we got a grant for the fire department, for Robert Vogel got it for us. And so I talked to Plant Moran, they said we need to show a revenue coming in and expenditure going out. Even though we're not going to see any cash, they're just going to buy the piece of equipment and give it to us. It needs to be reflected on our financials, and so I think it's pretty cut and dried.
Yep. Thank you for being
I
here.
don't know if anybody has any questions?
Does anyone have anything for Lori?
I got one.
Councilmember Walton?
Do you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I'd like to make the motion. Oh, I just lost it. To approve the proposed amendments.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks again, Lori. New business number 2, approval of the DDA bylaws amendments. Mr. Donahue.
Yes. You have the copy before you, I believe. The DDA board requested, actually myself and members of the DDA board looked at the DDA law, Public Act 197 in 1975 as amended. The DDA has been discussing this for over a year, changing the appointment. While the DDA makes a recommendation for their board members, the appointment currently reads that it's by the city manager with city council approval. The DDA wanted that changed to approval by the mayor, as with the other boards and commissions, except for Cultural Arts Commission and DDA. So they would like that change to mayor, and the 4 different amendments all reflect that change.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Parisian, and then over to you, Councilmember Kivel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, I'm actually going to give you my copy because this is riddled with spelling errors, grammatical errors, and I know it was last updated in 2014, but it can't go on the city's website. It wouldn't make South Lyon look good at all.
We're aware of those. We're aware of many.
Okay.
Right.
'Cause we spoke, and
Yes.
I caught some, he caught some, we caught a bunch.
We didn't look, actually what we did is we didn't review the entire document for spelling. We looked at the areas that we were changing, so
Yeah.
we will absolutely
No, that's
make
okay.
all
And
the
I know
changes.
this isn't your product. It's from 2014, but I mean, I just read it out loud, and not even just the spelling errors, it's just the flow. There's a lot of flow that does not make sense. And when you say it out loud, you're like, wait a minute, is this English? So that's my first thing. So I'm just going to give this to you instead of rattling off and taking up time. But I do also have some questions about the process and the application and how this works, because in light of what's happened in the last couple months with the 2 candidates that we had for the DDA position and the issue with time stamping and what forms to use and who to submit them to, I think that needs to be clear. I think we really need to delineate and highlight that process, because I think the DDA is a little different than our other boards and commissions. So currently, we have a form that is for all of our boards and commissions, right? But the DDA has a special process, and that has to go through DDA approval, but there's no way of knowing that currently. So I think we need to spell it out on the website, we need to spell it out on Facebook, we need to spell it out in a different way and maybe with a different form. Just take off the DDA from the current form we have right now and have a separate form just for DDA that highlights you need to obtain approval from the DDA.
Right. I think probably, for lack of a better description, probably 75% of the process is the same as the other boards.
Okay.
So I think, but you're exactly right. The differences need to be clear, needs to be on the website. I've talked with our new city manager, Zelnak,
Perfect.
that there are a number of things that should be on that website about this, and they will be.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so then if we look at the bylaws as they're currently written, where am I missing the step where you have someone taking minutes, right? So if we're looking at page 3, and we're looking...
July 12 minutes?
No, of the actual bylaws.
Oh.
So if we're looking at page 3, and we're looking at the individual who's taking the minutes, where do they submit them? Do they keep them? Do they put them online? Do they have to give them to the clerk? Where's that step? What are we missing there? How do we get the minutes from the meeting onto the website?
The minutes always go on the website. It has been in the past practice for years. Except before I came, I reviewed that, and there were many, under the previous city manager, there were many that were never placed on.
Mm-hmm.
So there are gaps before I came on.
Yeah,
When I came on, we have not had a gap.
That's great.
We played it right by the book. And so what happens is that once they are approved, the following a month, obviously the next board meeting, they're up for approval. And assuming we have a quorum, then they are approved, and then they go directly onto the website.
Okay. So when you say it, it sounds great, and I'm totally on board with that process. My only qualm is when you leave, which I hope that never happens, but like you're going to retire one day, right? Like 50 years from now.
Maybe
But-
100 years.
But in the event that your legacy carries on. Someone else comes to take your place and they do things differently. I think it's important that we spell it out in here. So the secretary shall attend all the meetings and keep records of its proceeding, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but shall provide the minutes to, and then carry on with the process you have in place. So it is past practice, and you're doing it right now, which is excellent. I just think we need to put it in writing so that anybody who comes after you knows exactly what the process is. We all know what it is, so that way there's no questions.
Sure. I might have a question for the city attorney on this.
Sure.
And that is that and many other things don't appear in bylaws often because the statute, Public Act 197 as amended, it's common practice. It's a requirement. You have to keep your minutes.
Of course. Of course.
And you have to put them on file, and we choose to put them on the website. So what I'm saying is that we can certainly also put them here.
Yeah.
But I think it's clear that we're following the statute, but I maybe defer that question.
So the OMA requires you to keep minutes, absolutely. The OMA requires you to keep them on file. We just do the courtesy of putting them online, but if that's our practice as the city of South Lyon, then I think we need to indicate that and say, hey, listen, if you are a secretary, you're going to take those minutes and you're going to give them to the clerk. So it's spelled out process by process. There's no questions.
So are you
asked about it.
suggesting another amendment that I can take
Yes.
back to the DDA board?
I would suggest in line item, so it's going to be section 4I on page 3, we spell out whether the secretary puts them on the South Lyon website themselves or it goes to the clerk and the clerk does it. However you wish to do it, I'm on board with it. But I just think it needs to be clear. Okay, so I think also we're missing a section 6. So if you look, page 3 is section 5, submission of the budget. Page 4, we make it to 7. So I
Interesting.
think we're supposed to have a section 6 where that A is right there. I don't know the title of it. I'm assuming meetings, scheduled meetings. But I just wanted to highlight that. And then,
Good question.
okay, and that's really all I have for this. Hang on one second. Yeah.
Is that to be considered a correction, adding section 6? I'll
I'm gonna
double check
give you.
that.
I'm just gonna give you this
Okay.
because honestly, I don't want to say it
All
all.
right.
Okay.
Councilmember Kivel, and then over to you, Councilmember Kennedy.
I have just 3 questions, actually. First off, could you provide what the advantage of changing from the mayor being, or the city manager being the person that makes the appointment, or the mayor?
Well, I think in my, seems odd to say, but in my 40 years of experience with downtown development authorities, I have not ever seen this be the case. There might be the case for this, but I've not ever seen it in any of the other DDAs.
What's the advantage of it, though?
The advantages of it are that there are potential conflicts that arise. I don't want to speak of the last city manager, but there could be attendance issues. Also, I think there tends to be a conflict with that person having a vote on the board and interacting. And again, because I've not seen it before, I think it's a very uncomfortable, unusual situation. And I think conflicts can arise.
I guess and it is pretty commonplace for the mayor to end up being that. But unfortunately, and this has no reflection on you because I think you're doing a terrific job, but I've known some mayors that I thought would be wholly inappropriate to be that person. So that was the only thing that I wondered about. I actually thought having the city manager as the DDA director, your direct report, that would end up making sure that they would be intimately understanding everybody's role that was going on and a one step away from the city operation.
I think it's understandable that perhaps because there was no position that I occupy now, and so that direct, the direct stream of information from the board to the city. And I think to go back to your previous question, I think with my position, it makes more sense to have this handled like the other boards and commissions.
To have it handled what?
Like the other boards and commissions, because I am there to give that direct link back to the city in my role. And we avoid what might be perceived as a conflict. We don't have to worry about that with my position.
Your comment about attendance in that, I mean, a mayor could end up being negligent in attending as well, so that seems to kind of...
But it's awkward for the board to take action against someone who might be in an appointing, it's an awkward situation.
Well, why wouldn't it be the same awkwardness with a city manager?
Well, I agree.
So,
but it's
okay. There are two other aspects of this whole thing. One of them, the idea that it would be a temporary appointment only. An appointment to fill a vacancy shall be made by the mayor if that takes place upon recommendation of the board for the unexpired term only. There's no mention of, does that need council approval or no, for them to appoint an interim member?
Well, everything is a recommendation, so they are making a recommendation to appoint.
Okay.
Everything goes
That's
back.
not reflected in this language is all. The city council doesn't have the ultimate approval at the end
All
of that.
appointments need to be approved by city council.
Okay.
The recommendation to appoint, it is a little awkward. The DDA board, by law, is approving these positions, and then after their approval, they're recommending.
Mm-hmm.
But after they approve amongst themselves, they recommend to the city manager or the mayor. And then the mayor has to still take it to city council for final approval. In all situations, unexpired term, whatever.
Okay.
Resignations?
After resignations.
Okay.
Yes.
The reason I'm kind of starting to get more serious about these conversations is we're at the brink of actually getting some real revenue stream as a product of the DDA and the TIF. So I would like us to get everything as buttoned down as we can and have solid business practices being, you guys have done a great job, and historically the DDA has been very supportive of our downtown. So, but nonetheless, it's still getting more real now and more important that we have everything pretty well locked down. So the notion of the recording secretary, what were those two places?
I think it was not clear as to the board officers. There's a secretary. We're trying to clarify that the actual clerk, treasurer has a role.
There was a number of things in the document that had never been enacted. I mean, it was language, but there was never any role that actually took effect to fulfill that. So I was just
I would like to say that while we're honing in on 4, we only ever looked at just those 4. And I would think there is every reason to look at the whole document after this.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't
And the
be a bad
board
idea.
should discuss the whole document
Yeah.
as kind of a separate issue and do that right away.
Right. But this could get you rolling and
Yes.
smooth things out for you. I understand that. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Kennedy, you had something?
Oh, just real quick, I mean, it appears that the document needs to be reworked based on some of the comments that have been presented tonight, and you already have the errors that I identified, and I sent those to you, right?
Councilmember Parisian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, really quick, so for resignation, for C on page 2, can we just have the language included that says, and shall be approved by city council? So,
I think that Again, that's a great suggestion, but I think properly, we'll go back to the DDA board,
Yeah.
and that'll be an amendment.
Absolutely.
But I
I'm
think we're
just
going to review
suggesting
the
it.
whole document, and that specific item we will put on the
Perfect.
agenda.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you. I also have found a lot of errors in the document, so I'm not going to repeat those. I'm not in favor of it changing from the city manager to the mayor. I just personally take a look at some of the mayors that we've had in the past, and some of them have not been that interested in moving the downtown forward. I think they probably would have put people on the DDA that would have accepted non-complacence and would have been very happy with the DDA staying the way it is. I think when you have a city manager who is making the appointments, you have someone who is here 5 days a week that is far more committed to moving the city forward. I think sometimes has more knowledge of the personalities involved and is probably more in tune to the issues that need to be addressed on the DDA in terms of a functioning entity moving forward, capitalization, improvements, et cetera, that I don't think a mayor necessarily brings to the dinner table. I just think that the city manager is the one that we have hired to be part of the downtown development program, and I think it's only fitting that that individual continue to remain. Now, maybe some city managers have not been as effective as others, but the city managers in the past that have been on the DDA, for the most part, have done a good job and have carried the vision of the city as best they could have at the time, given their resources and no economics development director. They did the best they could. Like I said, I would hesitate, not that our mayor, present mayor, wouldn't do a good job, but I do look back on some of the mayors, and it would have been disastrous to allow a mayor that kind of control over the DDA. So I'm voting no on this to change it, and that's my reason why. But if the corrections get made, it is what it is.
I got a question.
Councilmember Parisian.
Okay, I'll make it quick. I'm sorry. So I'm indifferent one way or the other whether we have the city manager choosing the appointment or allowing the appointment, et cetera, the approval of it, or the mayor. However, I would like to point out that generally, ever since I can remember, the mayors in our community have lived here their whole lives, and they personally know the business owners, they personally know the community, they have a personal relationship, they know people, and they can speak to their character. So I think there is value in having the mayor choose or have the ability to approve or disapprove. Not that the city manager wouldn't have that over time and be able to build that with experience, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here because there is value in having the mayor as a figurehead in our community. They're involved in the downtown as it is. They know our business owners. They know the characters downtown. So they can speak pretty sufficiently and intelligently to who would be a good fit, I think.
I think, to be fair to both Councilperson Parisian and Kurtzwell, our new city manager, we looked at the law, and it can be either the mayor or the city manager, Paul?
Yes, if I may, the Public Act 197 of 75 does identify under Section 1G that is the chief executive officer, which can be the mayor or the city manager. I will identify, though, for you that Section 4 in our particular charter does identify as the chief executive officer of the city as being the mayor. I would recommend making that change just based upon that specific language. In the majority of the times, if city council does have a representative on that board as appointed by the mayor or as appointed by city council, in some instances it can be the mayor. And in this instance, if the manager is the one that's making an appointment, and because I am the manager, I am on the board, I think Bob's was referring to that I may be influencing a vote on there if I would appoint an individual, and that particular individual may take a recommendation of how I vote because they were appointed by me. that's a separate issue than the issue relating to who the chief executive officer is. And I did have the discussion with the city attorney today, so I believe that that is the issue that is basically the binding precedent of how this, or who should be making the appointment.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
So I just want to clarify this. What you're now saying is that the argument changes. The justification for putting the mayor on is to provide consistency and alignment with the charter. That's the real reason why you're making the change. That's a very different argument.
I think that's really just in follow-up. That's just my reading as in going over this and finding what had taken place. And the majority of jurisdictions that I've always worked in, it was always the mayor or the village president that made the appointment. And then I just immediately went to the act and then checked the city charter and then had a conversation with the city attorney and Bob just today about it and said, this further establishes why you need to make this particular change.
Then I'll change as long as it's consistent with the city charter, but that's a very different argument. I'm glad you raised that. Thank you.
Councilmember Kivel?
I think it is pertinent that a mayor, by nature, the very nature, has to have relationships with all the people in the downtown and the businesses and all the participants that would likely comprise the board. Not that the city manager wouldn't reach out to have those relationships, but I think it's a lot more likely a mayor is going to try to build that personal relationship. And since the city manager, by the nature of the board of trustees, is already a member, he's representing the city and our best interests during every bit of action that they're taking anyway. So that's already accounted for. So I don't really guess I have a problem with that part. So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed amendments to the DDA bylaws identified, Section 3, Board of Trustees, item A and D, and Section 4, Officers, items H and I, as unanimously approved and recommended by the DDA on July 12, 2018, with the specific text changes as attached.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
That took
Thank
longer
you,
than
and
it should have.
Thank you, and the board will look at the entire document.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Thank
good.
We will move forward here to new business number 3, revised road closure and event hours for Brotoberfest.
Yes. Originally, because of the network's indecision on when the time of the Michigan State game, but in talking with the building owners and business owners of East Lake Street and some of the other business owners, we were asked with all that information to extend the hours slightly and set up time with logistics. So I reviewed this with Police Chief Collins, and even though today they announced that the game has been moved back to noon, up and down ping pong ball of the time, we're confident that with the setup of our television, strictly legal, inside, no one's paying to watch the game at KV Sports. So to honor KV Sports' commitment as a sponsor, we'll continue with the hours extended as approved by our police chief.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I move to revise the road closure of East Lake from Lafayette Street to Wells Street to noon to 11:30 p.m. and the event times to 5 to 10 p.m. on October 20th, 2018.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you all very much for all your patience this evening. Thank you.
Good job, Bob.
Yeah.
Moving on to new business number 4, acceptance of Firehouse Sub Safety Foundation grant for Lucas 3 chest compression device. Chief Vogel is here, but he stepped out to speak on the phone. Okay. Okay. I mean, this is great, obviously. So, I mean, just a rubber stamp here. So, did anyone else have anything they wanted to mention about it? Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I move to approve the grant from Firehouse Sub Safety Foundation.
Oh, okay.
I second.
One moment. Discussion. Councilmember Kennedy.
I just want to make it clear to the residents of South Lyon that Chief Vogel picked this up as part of a discussion that we had during the Blues, Brews, and Brats. He worked diligently with Lori to identify a particular source for it. They completed the paperwork, and he pursued it through to completion. So I'd like to compliment Chief Vogel for pursuing it and making it a reality. I've spoken with some of the firefighters that we have. They're looking forward to having this piece of equipment on their trucks.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Kennedy, for noting that. We have a motion and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 5, sale of the 2005 Ford Excursion by the Fire Department. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I move to approve the sale of the 2005 Ford Excursion to August Township Fire Department for $3,500.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, South Lyon Educational Foundation Charitable Gaming License.
You want me to introduce?
Yes, please.
The South Lyon Educational Foundation is a nonprofit group established to benefit South Lyon Community Schools by promoting the educational mission of the South Lyon Community Schools. They're attempting to get a charitable gaming license from the state of Michigan for an event they are holding on Saturday, October 13th. They're asking for the attached resolution to be passed by the local government stating that they are recognized as the nonprofit organization within the community. They've attached their exemption letter and letter from the state of Michigan and bylaws of the South Lyon Educational Foundation. We ask that you approve the agreement and the resolution as attached.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Friesian.
If there's no discussion, I'd like to make the motion. Anybody? Okay. I'll make the motion to approve the request from the South Lyon Educational Foundation of South Lyon, Michigan, County of Oakland, to be recognized as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of obtaining charitable gaming licenses.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 7, approval of settlement agreement in Joyce Colosi versus City of South Lyon, MDCR, charge numbers 486125, 486550, 486847, and EEOC charge number R23A-2018-10195C. Councilmember Walton.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to correct you. You said it as 486125, and it's 486152.
Thank you, Councilmember Walton. My dyslexia kicked in there.
That's okay.
So again, let me just reread that then. Approval of settlement agreement in Joyce Colosi versus City of South Lyon, MDCR charge numbers 486152, 486550, 486847, and EEOC charge number R23A-2018-10195C.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Wilhelm.
Your outside counsel, Tom Fleury from Keller Toma, per your direction, negotiated a settlement agreement of Ms. Colosi's charges against the city, the council, and a council member. This would be the action to approve the final settlement agreement and move past this issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I'd like to move to approve the settlement agreement in Joyce Colosi versus City of South Lyon, MDCR charge numbers 486152, 486550, 486847, and EEOC charge number R23A-2018-10195C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Having approved the settlement agreement in Joyce Colosi versus City of South Lyon, I will read the following statement on behalf of the City Council. During the selection process that was conducted on January 18th, 2018, Councilmember Richards' question to Joyce Colosi was an inappropriate question that should not have been asked. And we will move on to the budget this evening. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had an opportunity to read, not in absolute detail, but some of the key parts in the Plant Moran memorandum that they sent to us, and I found it to be very, very informative, as it always is. Unfortunately, as with the Plant Moran audits, there still continues to be problems with the budgeting process. I was a little bit dismayed to see that we still have issues that we still need to deal with. It's been, we worked very, very hard. I know, Paul, that in your interview, you said that the city's finances were in pretty good condition. I just want to let you know that a lot of people worked really hard to get to that position of a budget that you have reviewed and thought that it was in good condition. A lot of people and a lot of time. So this is not an easy process for this city, so if it just helps us background information, I think it's good to have you here and to take a fresh look at things, but the budgeting process has been a problem for the city for a while. I did not see a letter. I don't know if we have a letter from the state of Michigan this year stating that our expenditures exceed revenues. So I'm hoping that this is now October. We have passed that landmark September date, and we're not getting a letter. So that would be one improvement over last year. One thing I did want to bring to everyone's attention, which is something that I've spent time on, are the legacy costs. And I just want to let you know that Plant Moran spent a good time on this. This is on page 7. And they were complimentary to the city, that the city is well aware of the legacy liabilities and has begun to address them, including closing the defined benefit plan to new entrants. That said, the challenge here is significant. So we have work to do on issues of legacy costs and unfunded liabilities. So I do want to at least keep that to the forefront. I'm going to go to the web pages and the PDFs that they have referred to in their audit letter, but I just at least want to let people, the public, know that the audit season is here and we've got some good information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else with anything on the budget this evening? All right, great. We'll move on to our manager's report and our new city manager, Mr. Paul Zelenak.
As you know, in this particular packet, I provided information that you may have actually received at prior meetings. It may not necessarily be in the method that was provided in the past, but I do plan on providing weekly reports to council. Certain information that's been provided by other departments, we're going to disseminate and work with council to determine what kind of information we want to provide on a regular basis. So bear with us. Please comment with me which information you like, you don't like, and we'll try to work out what's best. I do want to make a couple comments on a few things that are coming up. One, this next week we're going to be meeting with representatives of MMRMA regarding our risk management. So we're reporting back to council as well as coming back with the renewal information. I did attend Pumpkin Fest. I got firsthand knowledge of how it's a great event for the community. Got a chance to meet a lot of business owners as well as a lot of police and fire personnel. It was a great event. I'm glad we had a spectacular day, and I'm happy that it wasn't on the Sunday when we had the lousy weather. I want to update council too regarding Comcast installation that has been taking place at a lot of locations around town. They are working diligently at various locations. They are disrupting people's front yards, side yards. The work that they're doing is either within an easement on private property or within city right-of-way. I just ask that the residents please be patient in what they're doing. They'll try to expedite things. We are getting calls. We want to make sure it's safe. We want to make sure they don't hit any water lines, gas lines, electrical lines, or anything like that. But I have been in contact with their representatives, and I still do expect calls coming in from residents, and we'll try to resolve those issues as quick as possible. Over the last week, I did have a lot of meetings, individual meetings with staff members, and a continual head meeting with different departments. It's been very beneficial, and the employees have been really good in providing a lot of information and a lot of feedback based upon those meetings. I will be reviewing staffing levels, and I have been based upon a couple positions within planning as well as the superintendent, and I will be making a recommendation shortly on how we should proceed with that. The ballot proposal that's coming up, I have provided some information to you regarding that's what's going to be coming before us on November 6th, and we are reviewing the proposals to see what ordinances may need to be created or changed based on how or if those particular proposals are passed. One last item is 318 Lake Street. We did receive a copy of the condition report by Safe Built. We're going to be bringing that item back to a subsequent council meeting. All of you have been provided that. I would like all of you to have the opportunity to review that. It is an item that does identify the potential expenditures for improving that building. We have a few different options on that property. Do we make those improvements? Do we not make those improvements? Do we sell the building after or before? Do we want to keep it as some sort of commercial use as was potentially discussed? Do we keep it as or turn it into a residential use? Or do we potentially demolish the building? There's a lot of different options there. I think all of you had the opportunity to review it. And I think that if we need to request any additional information, we can do that with Safe Built. But please review that information and we can talk about it at a later meeting. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have anything for the city manager? Councilmember Kurzweil?
Yes, regarding the staffing levels, I'd like to speak to you, either tonight or whatever, regarding the pay that went to the zoning administrator and the hard feelings that it brought to employees in the city. So I just sort of want to discuss that with you and see if we can avoid that on the new hire. He didn't last long, but just want to bring that to your attention.
Great. At this point, we'll open the floor for our second public comment. Please state your name and address. Yes, please, Chief.
Robert Vogel, Brighton, Michigan. Did my items pass?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we know you had to step out in the hallway, but Councilmember Kennedy.
Yeah, so he led it back at the Brews Beer and Brats. They came up to me and we discussed it. We went for the grant. I'm so grateful we got it from Firehouse Subs.
Yeah.
Public Safety Foundation. I want to thank Lori Moser, Patricia Tiernan, Chief Lloyd, and Stephen Kennedy.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Very cool. Thanks, Chief. Great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
At this time, we'll close public comment and move on to council comments. And how about Councilmember Kennedy getting us started tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To begin tonight, I'd like to welcome Paul Zelnick to our city and wish him the very best as he helps move South Lyon forward over the coming years. So welcome, Paul. Secondly, I'd like to thank Chief Collins for shouldering the responsibilities of police chief and city manager over the past 9 months and helping to keep the city moving in the right direction by addressing the requirements for both positions. So thanks, Lloyd. Next, I want to thank the South Lyon Police and Fire Departments for their support during Pumpkin Fest as they diligently work to ensure the safety of all residents, visitors, and participants in this great event. I next want to thank Melissa Baker, the superintendent of South Lyon Community Schools, for supporting the SEMCOG campaign for safe walking, biking, and driving by posting the literature throughout the schools in our community school district and distributing the SEMCOG materials to the students in the various schools. Likewise, I'd like to recognize Kathy Marucci from the Salem South Lyon District Library, who will also be distributing the literature and materials to the parents and children attending the Howl-O-Ween Under the Moon event at the library to be conducted on Wednesday, October 24th at 6 p.m. Also, thanks once again to the South Lyon Cable Commission and to Rich, Stephen, and Amber for their help in airing the SEMCOG public service announcements on our local cable channel. And finally, I'd like to congratulate Doug and Deb Cook and all the other folks who helped with the Lake Street Cruise-In for putting on such a wonderful event this year in downtown South Lyon. I can't wait to see what they'll bring to the city next year, especially with the second annual Motor Fest. So thanks again and congratulations. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Richards?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to go over a number of little topics here, but I have to go fast, I guess. First up, Nora Marr, thank you, thank you, thank you. And for those of you who don't know who that is, that's our tree trimmer. And over the past 2 weeks, they've taken down 2 trees that were extremely dangerous. And it's their call. When they get up in the air and they find out it's too bad to save, okay, they take it down all the way. That makes 5 times they've worked on Liberty Street this year and saved us from injury and damage with terrifically dead trees that we've had, and they've taken them out. And there's one more to go down on the end. I hope they can get to it. Anyway, thank you very much. Okay, number 2, the Children's Free Library in McCaddy Park has been dressed up and decorated, and it's seeing a lot of action lately, okay? Children and older adults have been putting books and one thing materials in there, and it's been getting quite a bit of attention. Number 3, kudos for Jeff Heineman, the project coordinator. I've been watching it. I've been taking some pictures of it, and Herb Strecker, I met with him on the site, okay? He's going to build some ironworks, similar to what they have up at the hotel. But it may not come all the way till next year, and some of it is projected to go into next year. But they do plan to have the Christmas tree here at Cool Yule. Pumpkin Fest, just want to make mention fast, it was a great weekend. I saw the whole parade, first time in years that I've ever seen the whole parade. And I counted 41 women in the walkathon. I guess it's a 5K walk or run, the 5K run. Some of them were little girls, like 6, 8 years old. I thought it was really cute. And out of hundreds of participants. For those of you that are worried about poison ivy in your yards or on the bike paths or whatever, at this time of year, the 3 varieties of poison ivy, the ground variety turns red, okay, with brown on the rims. The climbing variety with the bigger leaves turns yellow and has brown on the very back. And the intermediate variety turns red and brown, okay. So and they turn before the leaves for the wild grapes and English ivy. So it's easy to pick out. I know it by heart, but I'm just saying if people want to be careful on the bike path, now's the time to make sure you recognize where the poison ivy is. Paul, I'm glad you're here, right? And we're looking forward to working with you in the future. I'm sorry that we lost our little figure men on the downtown on the poles, but I understand it's for the best because they deteriorate. And I'm glad we've got corn stalks up there with real corn cobs in them, okay? And I hope it don't attract too many raccoons. Okay, here, I'll just mention the 501 McMunn. I was there today, stopped by. Mr. Allen was there. We talked. He invited me to go inside. I went through the place and looked the thing over. Bottoms, they're clean except for a few items that are in there. The main thing is the tenants have been gone. They are gone, but the smell is not. The animals, as you might well imagine. Better call hazmat. But yeah, I went through it, okay, and Mr. Allen and I talked about a lot of things. And we're going to have to get Noramar in there because I was surprised at the property stakes. I surveyed the property stakes, where they are and where we own it, where are we going to own this land. We've got a lot of dead trees that we got to get cut out of there because they're dangerous. Take a look at them. Okay, just make a few quick comment on 135 Lake Street. Mary, I believe you brought this up quite a bit, you know, and I just want to make sure everybody knows that I've been working with them at 135 Lake Street to help clean things out best I can, and some things are gonna come over to my house, and we're gonna have a garage sale. And some things are gonna be stored in the basement. But I'm helping out with the people, and the Bonner family that are heirs of Lyon's are working. I believe they were here in town yesterday, according to the tracks in the grass, right across the street here at 234 Liberty, with another big trailer load. But I didn't get out to greet them, but they were there. And they're focusing on South Lyon first with all their communities that they have to deal with. 84 properties in 6 different counties, as I recall the number was given to me. Okay, and I'm sorry to see Patrick, our zoning director, our zoning guy, I'm sorry to see him go. I got along good with him, and I worked with him, and he's a young fella, and he's got a wife and a kid, and I can't blame him if he gets a better job. I hope we can retain officers for zoning and other capacities as capable and competent as he was, okay, and retain them more, okay, get them to stick with us more. I think we'll all be better off if we can count on him. He did a great job. Him and I walked it up the Mill Street project several times, getting through the backside, because it was I know how to get back in the property from the back. Anyway, that's all my comments for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Friesian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. Welcome, Paul. If I can make the request, could you shoot us an email with your contact information, just so we can save you and have you on speed dial when we need you? Chief Collins, I should actually thank you now, because I always call you and bug you, especially during that interim period. You did an excellent, excellent job. Thank you for wearing both hats, playing both roles, and never missing a beat. Excellent job.
Thank you, and keep my number in speed dial too.
I do. Next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to mention downtown trick or treat. It was mentioned earlier. I believe Bob had mentioned it during the DDA downtown discussion. October 25th between 6 and 8. Bring lots of candy. Also, I thought this was kind of cool as well. The South Lyon Historical Society is hosting an event for all the history buffs out there on October 16th at 7 o'clock. It's the history of the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad in Southeast Michigan. So if you are a history buff and you guys want to learn a little bit more about that, I mean, the Witches Depot is rich in history. That's something that we should all take the time to go see and check out and learn more about. I also wanted to say thank you to all the Pumpkin Fest volunteers, all of our city employees, the staff, the people that showed up. It was an excellent event, and every year it gets better and better. And with that, don't forget to volunteer. Again, as always, I always say this until I'm blue in the face, but if you or someone you know are interested in a committee, we have a variety to choose from. I think something that touches on anyone's interests, and spread the word. We could always use the help. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you. Councilmember Walton?
The only thing I have tonight is welcome. We're looking forward to working with you. And that's it. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you, Councilmember Walton. Councilmember Kibble?
Lloyd, I wanted to just thank you. You kind of got us through a tough patch there, and you ended up putting up with an awful lot of nonsense that was absolutely unbelievable and inappropriate, and you did it with a bomb. And I'm grateful for your backbone. I mean, you just stuck to it. It's not as though it didn't annoy you, but nonetheless, you held up really well during the course of that whole thing, and you ended up providing more leadership in that office than had been taking place for an awful long time. So that was, we're all very grateful that you got us to the end to allow Paul to come in and actually perform that role as a professional manager, and we're grateful. So. Like everybody's already said, Pumpkin Fest was terrific. We caught a break with the significant Saturday being just ideal weather to be able to perform, and everybody seemed to have had a wonderful time. And the last meeting, we kind of broached on the idea of the water tower, and as it turned out, that paint sample had to be or it turned out to be exactly the paint that was selected, and it just is unfortunate that it doesn't translate well from that long sight view as had been, Maggie had alluded to too. I would like us to entertain the idea of maybe reaching out to Dixon and finding out how much it would cost to go over the letters in black, something that would actually stand up. We've got a 20-plus year paint job on that tower. We need to use every available vehicle that we can to transmit our name to the world, and that existing paint job doesn't get that job done. So when you amortize the cost of whatever it's going to be over 20-some years, it becomes a pretty easy selection for me. So I guess I've said enough. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councilmember Kimball. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to first address an issue that an employee raised with me, and I was aware of it and just wanted to bring it to the attention of everybody. It's a very important statute, and it affects public employees and municipalities, which was sponsored by Jim Runstead. Jim Runstead is a well-known state legislator who has been fighting public corruption. Actually, he's a real good ally of mine. The statute is titled Public Employee Retirement Benefits Forfeiture Act. This piece of legislation was enacted because public employees who were convicted of felonies that breached the public trust were still allowed to keep their publicly funded pensions, but not anymore. I'm going to attach to the minutes Ross Jones's article listing some of the examples of why the Pension Forfeiture Act was even put in place. For example, we have a Dearborn police officer who was ticket fixing. He pled guilty in 2009, and today he is still receiving $2,600 in his pension check, and his pension check is still rolling on. The statute is very self-explanatory. I'm going to also provide it in the minutes so that all the employees have an opportunity to take a look at it. It does say that any member who is convicted of or enters a nolo contendere plea accepted by a court for a felony arising out of his or her service as a public employee is considered to have breached the public trust and must, it's not may, it says must have his or her rights to an otherwise vested retirement benefit and all accumulated employer contributions, including earnings on the employer contributions, standing so that the individual's credit in the retirement system is forfeited, as provided by this act. Recently, there was a individual that was convicted of this in September, and I did learn that the individual embezzled from his employer around $90,000. That's clearly a felony. And he was not aware of the Pension Forfeiture Act. I was able to get that out. So if this knowledge of the Pension Forfeiture Act, not that we have had a problem with any of our employees, but I think it's important to let public employees know that their pensions now are going to be at risk should there be felony related to a breach of public trust. So I want to thank Jim Runstead, who, like I said, is an ally of mine with respect to public corruption, which I've been fighting for almost 10 years. And I want to thank Jim Runstead for his helping municipalities to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. Also, what Jim Runstead did is he had an opportunity to talk with Larry Ledbetter over at the Historical Commission. And Jim and Larry Ledbetter have a common connection, and that is their passion for historic preservation. So Jim Runstead is going to work real hard and when he gets to the state senate, and hopefully he will be able to secure what he's looking for is grant monies. He and Larry Ledbetter specifically spoke about grant monies for cities and localities with respect to the historic preservation. So I want to thank Larry Ledbetter for networking for the city and keeping the historic village in South Lyon as a priority. And I want to thank him for taking the time to speak with Jim Runstead and make the connections that may be possible to get with some grant money for the next project for the Historic Commission. Next, let's not forget John Hogan's October 23rd financial seminar at the South Lyon District Library, 6:30, titled 5 Ways to Make Banking Easy. It's a great topic, so come in early if you need something notarized. Thank you, John, for your commitment to the community. Also, I would like to thank Great Lakes Ace Hardware for anybody who is looking for discount coupons, $2 admission off on the Novi Home Show beginning October 12th. Please stop by Great Lakes Ace Hardware and get your discount ticket. What a great service this is for people in the community. And while you're there, please stop in and say hello to Jenny. Jenny's been there for about 15 years, and she's one of those great individuals that welcomes the new people that are moving into the city. She doesn't discriminate between the new and the old. She'll talk to everybody, and she wants to see everybody. Next, I want to thank Diane's Dollhouse for an absolutely incredible plant at the Pumpkin Fest. It's called a pumpkin tree, and hopefully I will get a picture of that out to somebody who has a Facebook. Maybe citizen number 1 can help me on that one. It is a pumpkin tree. It is an annual that has fruit on it that looks just like pumpkins, and you can always go to Diane's Dollhouse for something that is truly unique in terms of gift giving. And also I'd like to welcome our new city manager, Paul Zelnick. You have a lot of work to do. There's some bridges that need to be mended and some or rebuilt, and some fences that need to be mended throughout the county. And I think you're probably the person to do that. So I want to welcome you and just say that the adulation for you has been overwhelming. As several employees told me, what a breath of fresh air. So you're batting 1,000. So I don't know if you're into baseball or not, but I just can tell you that everybody is just excited to have you here. So good luck. We wish you well. I know you're going to succeed because you just seem to be a person where success is the way you go. There's no other option for you but success. So glad to have you on board. And good night, everyone. Thank you for inviting all of us into your homes this evening, and we'll see you at the next City Council meeting.
Thank you. I just got a couple quick things this evening. I wanted to remind everyone the City of South Lyon Water Department is hosting an environmental and public health seminar, drinking water and wells on Wednesday, October 10th, 2018 at 2 o'clock to 2:45. That'll be in this room at the South Lyon City Hall Auditorium. And just wanted to remind everyone to come on out for that if you have interest in that. I wanted to thank South Lyon Police Department and Chief Collins for a epic ride in the front of the Pumpkin Fest parade. Last year, if you recall, it was like 100 degrees outside, and we walked it. That was great. But I think the seat to have is up front there in the Explorer. So thank you very much for that. That was a lot of fun. And actually, one of the things, I want to thank everyone that helped out at Pumpkin Fest and made that event great, as always. But one of the things I took away from the weekend in talking in town was how great our first responders are here with our South Lyon Fire Department and our SLPD. It's something occasionally we kind of tend to take for granted, so I wanted to just make sure we're getting a thank you out to those guys and women that support our town every day. So that was a great thing to take away from the weekend. And then lastly, because we won't be meeting again until this happens, I want to get this out to everybody. This is big because we're going to shut the town down. I'm joking, but week 9 of the high school football season is a week from this Friday. So that's October 19th. South Lyon will be at South Lyon East. Both teams are having a great year. And if you haven't been to one of these things, I got to tell you, the kids and the atmosphere, you will have a great time. So bring the family. Don't bring the family. You guys got to take this in. And like I said, both teams are having a great year. So hopefully we'll see you all out there again. That's October 19th. South Lyon will be playing at South Lyon East, and it's going to be a big thing. So with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn tonight.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Have a great night, everybody.